So my name's Heidi, and I'm a member of South PBC Indivisible in Palm Beach County, Florida. And I'm on the planning committee and I work on communications. So if you're not familiar, Indivisible is a grassroots movement that works to protect democracy, and there are chapters all over the country. And the reason that I wanted to present this session to you is that I have found that calling my congresspeople is therapeutic for me. I feel like the world's on fire and out of control, and honestly, it can make it hard to sleep at night. But calling Congress takes back some power, and taking action is the best antidote to despair. And it's an easy action. It's quick, it's free, it can be done any time of day or night from the comfort of your home or while you're taking a walk, or if you're waiting in a carpool line to pick up kids from school. This is a kind of activism that you can do in your pajamas, and it's flexible. You can do it alone or you can do it with a buddy. You can do as little or as much calling as you want, and no matter how much you do, it helps. Every call helps. So let's get into it. Here. There we go. So calling your representative is the best way to make your voice heard. Most Americans never call their representatives. So when you do call, they know you're an engaged citizen and they take that seriously. So the more effort you make, the more seriously they take you. A phone call represents more effort than a lot of other forms of contact. It's more effort and it's also quicker. Your voice is heard more quickly. Congressional staffers are tallying your phone calls in real time. An email takes longer for them to read and to sort. A letter or a postcard takes time to arrive through the mail. So calling is the quickest way to reach them. And when a staffer hears the voices of real live constituents, it has more impact because it's more personal than written communication. And as I said, it's quick and it's easy. By the way, if you've never done it before and if you're intimidated at the thought of calling your congressperson, remember you don't actually have to talk to them. You'll be talking to a staffer in their office. So why? Why is it useful to call Congress? Well, members of Congress spend about 50% of their time working on getting reelected. So your call tells them how they can win or lose your vote. And there's power in numbers. When a Congress member gets a flood of calls on an issue, it can prompt them to pay attention to that issue, to reconsider their stance, or to prioritize certain legislation. Voicing your opinion holds Congress members accountable. And remember that democracy is not a spectator sport. It depends on involved citizens. Plus, calling channels our frustration into constructive action and prevents our own burnout. So it doesn't matter which way your congressperson leans, no matter their politics, calling works. And it's easy to think, oh, my representative is part of the opposition. They're not going to listen to me. Or my rep already agrees with me. They don't need to hear from me. But I want to read you something from a helpful guide I found online, and it's called Call the Halls, Contacting Your Representatives the Smart Way, written by Emily Ellsworth, who's a former congressional staffer. And I have a handout that I'm going to be giving you a link to at the end, and I put the link to this Call the Halls in there, so you can read the whole thing if you want. It's like 20 pages long. But she poses and answers two questions. Question one is, I disagree with my representative, and they will never change their position to agree with me. Should I still call? She says, yes. We are all in danger of existing in an echo chamber. During my time working in Congress, we often heard from people in the extremes. More moderate or respectful people didn't often take the time to call. In every instance, I would have preferred listening to or even having a discussion with a respectful constituent who disagreed with our position over being yelled at by someone who agreed with us. And yes, that happened a lot. Constituents who let us know why they disagreed had important things to say, and we didn't hear from them enough. So it's crucial to let your representative know that you're paying attention and that you disagree. Okay, so then she poses question number two is, I agree with my representative and I like what they're doing. Should I still call? Emily says, yes, offering encouragement and suggestions to your representative is important. It's not fun to only take calls when people are upset about your position. It's good to hear from constituents who agree with you and want to thank you for your vote or your position on an issue. So, and in addition, as you can see here on the slide, it can help them to know that the public supports their position. They can use that as they're arguing for it in Congress. Plus, our tax dollars pay their salaries. They work for you, and you have the right to offer them direction. So what happens when you actually make a call? So a staffer or voicemail greets you. You give your name, you give your zip code so that they know you're a constituent, and you give your opinion. And then your message is logged. The office tallies the number of calls supporting or opposing the various issues. They might do it on a piece of paper, they might have a spreadsheet, whatever it is, they're tracking it. And then your rep and the staffers in their office who are crafting policy are pressured by those opinions, especially if there are a lot of them, a lot of calls. So, and also remember that there is a real human on the other end of the line. Phone calls are powerful because of the human connection that we all instinctively pay attention to. So who to call? So this is my local reps, my two Florida senators, and the local representatives for my neighborhood. Mine is Lois Frankel, nearby is Jared Moskowitz. So this slide is from when I was showing this to the people here at the South PBC Indivisible. But I want to also show you how to find the reps for other locations as well. So here are two really useful resources. The first one is the League of Women Voters. And don't worry about writing down or taking a screenshot because I am going to give you a handout that has all the links in it. But the League of Women Voters has a tool to find your elected officials, and that one is simple and straightforward. It shows your federal and state executives, senators, and representatives. If you go to this link for Common Cause, it shows you everybody from the president down to the judges and the county clerk. So if you want to be thorough, that is a good link for you. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So I want to point out that it's best to only call your own representatives. Being a constituent gives you leverage that you just don't have if you're not their constituent. And Indivisible advises that calling members of Congress you can't vote for is actually counterproductive. If you can't vote for them, they just don't care what you think. If you call reps who aren't yours, you're also clogging up the lines and preventing them from receiving calls from their own constituents who actually can impact them. And if you're calling from out of the district or out of the state, it gives them an excuse to dismiss your legitimate concerns about an issue. They can say, oh, it's just out-of-state troublemakers. You can call other elected officials, by the way. You don't have to only stick to your senators and your House representative. You can call other elected officials as long as it's somebody you vote for, so they'll care, like your governor or your state attorney general, if it's relevant to make a call to them. But stick with people that you actually do vote for. When you make a call, you should have a specific purpose. The staffer who answers the phone doesn't want to have a whole debate with you, and they don't want to hear you vent. They just want to know what you're asking for so they can mark it on their tally sheets. So tell them what you want, and the more specific, the better. So you can ask that, you can urge that your rep should vote a certain way on a nominee or on a bill. They should co-sponsor a bill. They should speak out about a specific issue. You could also thank them for voting a certain way. And it's great if you have the bill number. They really like it when you can tell them exactly what bill number it is, because then they don't have to figure out how to explain it to the boss. So, okay, what do you say when you call? You don't have to be fancy. You don't have to go into a lot of detail. You don't have to be an expert. You can just keep it as simple as this. Hello, my name is Jane Doe. I'm a constituent from this zip code. I'm urging my senator or representative to do this because here's my reason. Thank you. That's it. There are many, many scripts available, and I will tell you how to find scripts in a moment. So if you don't want to think up what to say, you can read it or adapt a script that already exists. But if you want to get fancy, if you have extra time and extra energy, you could take some or all of these extra steps. So you can try to call during business hours to speak to a live person instead of speaking to voicemail. You can call both the DC offices and their local offices. You can call your state reps about local issues and bills going through your state capital. You can call every day. You can repeat topics if you want to, or you could talk about new ones. You could ask to speak to the staffer who's in charge of your issue, and you can use your own words and add personal stories to give your calls extra impact. And if you're a donor, say so. So you could tell them if you voted for them in the last election. You could tell them if you donated to their campaign. You could mention your demographic, like I would say, as a white middle class woman, I think blah, blah, blah. You can explain how legislation will affect you, and that adds a lot more power to your request. And it's okay to be emotional or passionate, but you should remain polite. And if you have expertise on the issue you're calling about, let them know that too. Remember that the staffers, even the Congress members, even though sometimes it might not feel like it, they are human beings and they can be affected by your story. The thing about asking for a staffer, not every office has staffers in charge of the issues you might want to call about, but you can ask. You can say something like, "Hi, I'd like to speak to the staffer in charge of consumer rights, please," or something like that. You can call about more than one issue at a time, but it's best not to do more than like maybe two or three because it becomes a headache for the staffer. You can always call back again later or the next day with another issue. And if you like, you can call back about the same issue and ask for a progress report, and then they really know you're paying attention. It is okay to use a script, but the staffers will start recognizing the script if a lot of people call using that same one. So if you can use your own words, it has more impact. Okay, but how do you know what to call about? There are a lot of email newsletters and websites and apps that provide the topics to call about, the background information, and the scripts like I was talking about. So I'm going to show you what some of those are. If there's an issue that you're passionate about, you could call about that every day, or you could add it to your other calls. For example, a friend of mine whose daughter is trans mentions trans rights in every call that she makes. But there is so much going on. So how do you know what to call about? Well, here are some resources for that. So Indivisible. This session today is sponsored by South PBC Indivisible in Palm Beach County, Florida. National Indivisible offers an email newsletter that will keep you up to date on what's happening and give you suggestions for issues to call your Congress members about. And again, this is going to be in the handout. You don't need to take note of this URL. 5Calls. I highly recommend 5Calls. It's available as a website, as an app on your phone, and they also have a newsletter that you can sign up for. They make it super easy to call. You put in your address and then they identify your reps for you based on your address. They provide you with their Washington, D.C. and their local phone numbers. They give you background information about each issue, and they give you a script for each issue. And then when you make your calls, you can mark whether or not you reached your member of Congress or if you left a voicemail. And you can click on a tab for your impacts to get a little dopamine boost from seeing how many calls you have made. The Americans of Conscience Checklist. This is another helpful resource. You can visit their website or you can sign up to receive their checklists by email. I think it's weekly. They give you a list of calls to action with scripts and with links to more background information. And sometimes it's calls to Congress, but sometimes it's other things too, like leaving comments on the Federal Register. Sometimes it's calls to a business. For instance, a recent call to action was to denounce Avelo Airlines' decision to operate deportation flights for ICE by calling the airline. And they also suggest people to thank. For instance, thanking the reps who traveled at their own expense to El Salvador to demand the release of Kilmer Abrego Garcia. And at the end of their newsletter, they include a list of good news items to boost your morale. Chop Wood, Carry Water is an email newsletter that I really love. It's a daily political activism email newsletter. It comes out 5 days a week. And it has short, easy calls to action, and it has scripts, and it has a very encouraging tone. I love that each newsletter ends by saying, okay, you did it again. You're helping to save democracy. You're amazing. So even though, she's not actually talking to me personally, it feels good to see that. And it's written by Jessica Craven, who also has a podcast called The Practivist about practical activism. So this is my Substack. Congress Callers is a personal project of mine that I started before I joined Indivisible as a way to share calls to action with friends. I read, as I said, Chop Wood, Carry Water. I read a lot of different political newsletters. So when I get fired up about a particular call to action and I want to share it, this is my method for sharing it. So if you would like to subscribe to my newsletter, you're very welcome to do that as well. congresscallers.substack.com. Democracy.io In the hierarchy of impact, calling is better than emailing. But that said, every contact you make with your members of Congress is better than not contacting them. So if email is what works best for you, go for it. So this tool, democracy.io, makes it easy. Instead of going to each rep's website and filling out their contact form, you can write one message and it will automatically be sent to your two senators and your House rep all at once. And they don't provide a script. You can just say whatever you want. They just make the actual emailing easier. The reps don't give out their email addresses. They have contact forms on their websites. And so it's a little more cumbersome to fill that out, each separately. And this just simplifies and streamlines it. ResistBot. If texting is more your style, ResistBot is a good tool for you. So as you can see, you can start by texting the word resist to 50409. You can also use Apple Messages, Facebook Messenger, Instagram, or Telegram to do this. And there are a lot of different things you can do with ResistBot, but the easiest thing is signing petitions. So if you text the word trending to 50409, you'll see what petitions are available, and then to sign a petition, you text the code that it tells you. And there's so many different things that ResistBot can do. I haven't even explored them all yet, but if you want to check those out, you can go to resist.bot/guide. I'm going to tell you what, one more resource, Issue Voter. Issue Voter is a website that gives you the basic pros and cons of new legislation, and it lets you mark support or oppose on any bill. And then they compile that data and they share it directly with the lawmakers without your name on it. So this is if you are very shy and you want to share your opinion anonymously, you actually can do that. So they're basically providing the reps with aggregated information about how the public generally feels about each bill. And after the votes take place, you can also see whether your rep agreed with you. And this is useful information. It helps you get to know more about your rep, and it might even affect your voting decisions. So as I mentioned, this talk is sponsored by South PBC Indivisible, and we do have a Facebook group. So if you're a member of our group, we enjoin you, if you're a member of our South PBC Indivisible, we encourage you to join our Facebook group. It's a good place to ask questions about the issues and to proudly share about the calls you made to Congress. And we can be mutual support for each other, for people as we're all making those calls. So let's get into some specifics. Just to get you started, I've got two issues teed up that you could call about. So one is the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad budget reconciliation bill that literally robs from the poor to give to the rich. And the other is the so-called SAVE Act, which is an extreme voter suppression bill. So you can see I've got both of these here. One is homework and one is extra credit. So in the handout, I've given you scripts for these bills and links to more background information and codes that you could use if you want to use ResistBot. So when you get ready to contact Congress, these are the choices that you're making. First, you can learn about whatever bill it is, and I recommend 5 calls because they do a nice job of summing it up, but also linking to further information if you want to get into the weeds and really dive deep. Then you decide, am I going to make a phone call? Am I going to go on democracy.io and do an email? Am I going to do texting through ResistBot? Choose what you're going to do. Choose which tool you're going to use, if you found a script you like, or if you want to adapt it, and then go ahead and make contact. And then if you're in our Facebook group, you can share your experience. So taking a leaf out of Jessica Craven's book on chop wood, carry water, you did it, you're awesome. So those are 2 things that can get you started. The handout. Now this time I do want you to either write this down or take a screenshot because this is where you're going to find the handout. And I could also put it in the chat. tinyurl.com/SPBCI, which is for South PBC Indivisible, call Congress. So that's where you can get the handout that sums up what I just said and also has links to all of the resources that I was telling you about. So if you have questions that you want to follow up, I mean, we'll have time to talk now, but if you have questions later, you could get a hold of me through southpbcindivisible@gmail.com. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. At this point, to sum it up, while you may feel like your call is a drop in the bucket that can't make much of a difference, remember that all those drops add up to a bucket brigade. And the more people call, the more pressure we put on our representatives to do what we need them to do. And in terms of planning to call, think about what works for you. What are your goals about how often you will call? Are there particular issues you want to focus on? Is there a certain tool that you prefer? So just to give you my story, personally, I don't call every single day, but I call multiple times a week. And I work during the day, so I tend to call in the evening and talk to their voicemail. And for me, the main impetus to call is the suggestions that I read about in Chop Wood, Carry Water. I also love the scripts at 5 calls, and I like using it to track what calls I've made. And my husband calls too, so we remind each other, have you done your calls yet? And that's nice because we hold each other accountable like gym buddies. So would anybody else like to share what your calling looks like if you're already doing calls? Go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like to, or raise your hand. Um, Either way. Anybody want to share? No? Cindy's shaking her head. No, you don't want to share. Okay. Um, so I am also curious about whether you guys here who joined me today are doing any other kinds of activism, whether you're part of any bigger activist group of any kind, or if not, like what stops you? What's the barrier to your participation? What would make it easier? So any thoughts about that? Any kind of activism? I see Catherine just unmuted. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, so maybe I could, getting ready
Hi.
for, I'll put the video on too. Hi.
Hi.
Uh, yes, I'm coming to that Indivisible meeting, and I've never gone to rallies before. I've gone to a bunch of rallies, had a lot of fun, made a sign. Um, and so I did put a question in the chat, but I'll say it now in case you're not going to look at them. Um, I love that five whatever app. And it gives me one number in Washington for Rick Scott, and it gives me about 8 numbers in Florida for Rick Scott. So is it silly to call all 8? Should I just pick one of the Florida numbers?
You should pick the one closest to you,
Yeah.
like the one that's your neighborhood. I mean,
Oh,
that's why they do it, so you can find your local office.
that's right, because he covers the whole state. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Love the presentation. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
Okay, Loba, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I put the question in the chat and it's regarding making calls. I do love making calls because it is easy, but you said that it's better if you have your own script as opposed to a script that's given to you. How do they log it differently or how do they?
I don't think they log it differently. I don't actually know for sure. But the thing is, if everybody calls reading the same script, they'll start to be like, oh yeah, it's that thing. It won't carry as much weight because it won't sound like you thought of it for yourself or that it's your personal ish thing that you're dealing with. So but I mean I don't necessarily come up with things from scratch either. I look at the scripts and then I just sort of paraphrase. And I think, even if you do just read the script, that's okay too, because everything is better than nothing. No matter
Yeah.
what you do, it's more than not doing anything. So if reading the script is what works for you, do it.
I was
But
just wondering
I
like
was just
when
trying to
they
give like the scale of, the ideal would be to just say it in your own words.
I was just wondering like how they maybe everyone's different. All the staffers are different. I don't know if like there's a place where they like put actual notes in there or do they just check a box?
Yeah, I don't actually know. But because 5 calls is widely used, if everybody calls and reads that same script, it's going to start to sound familiar to the
Right.
humans answering the phone. So,
That's true.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Thank you.
thanks.
One thing about the scripts is it helps people get started.
Yes,
Once you get comfortable making calls, then you'll start using your own words. But if you're nervous, it gives you a place to start.
exactly.
And then you can modify it as you need to and make it your own. But at
Right.
least you're not cold calling and your brain freezes up. You have something to start with.
Exactly. Thanks, Cindy. Marion, were you raising your hand?
Yeah, hi.
Okay.
I have been active for, I guess, on and off since the 80s. Um, And I noticed though, when I was in Florida, I go back and forth to Florida. And when I'm in Florida and I call from my 917 number, which is a New York number, I was told by somebody in Rick Scott's office that I'm not a constituent. And I said, well, I pay taxes to Florida, and it didn't seem to matter. So they are very careful when they see the number. Um, so I also have a landline, which I'm going to reactivate in Florida because I'll call from the landline because I see that they look at that phone and they don't want to listen unless it's their local constituent.
Okay, well, so it's interesting because you're underlining the point that I was making that they want to hear just from their constituents, but I
Yes.
am surprised that they would assume that an area code means you're not a constituent because in this modern era of cell phones, people move and they keep their phone number. Like they don't know where you live based on your phone number anymore. That's
Right.
so 19 whatever. So I mean, if you
I
just say
know, and
no,
I
my
see a
zip
lot
code
of phone
is.
numbers in Florida from New York.
Yeah, I mean,
Cell
just tell them
phones.
your zip
Yeah, yeah.
code and say, don't worry about my phone number. It's my cell.
Yeah, yeah. But that was
Yeah.
told to me on
Well, they're nuts to say that. That's a very old-fashioned attitude. So thank you. Let me look in the chat and see what other things people are saying here. Question on the 5 call. Okay, you asked me that. That was from Catherine. Is using the same script as a lot of other people get logged. Yeah, I don't know if it gets logged differently. We talked about that. Right. Okay. So as Batya mentioned, if you're local, we do have our monthly action meeting of South PVC Indivisible coming up on Sunday, June 1st at 2:30 at the Canyon Branch Library in Boynton Beach. Okay. Good. Oh, and I also wanted to say, in terms of voicemail, sometimes I call during the day, mostly not because I'm busy, but when I do call during the day, I reach my Democratic representative's office and a nice, polite person answers the phone. I used to sometimes reach a live human at my Republican senators' offices, and those staffers who answered were also polite and nice. But now I never reach a human. My theory is that the Republicans have all decided to not actually talk to people live because they don't
Hmm.
want to deal with us. So it always
It's
goes to
probably
voicemail, but I still
it's
leave them voicemail.
probably
What's that,
it's
Patricia?
probably just like they don't do the town halls
Right,
because they don't want to hear the
right,
dissension.
right.
One of the things I wanted to say that's new to me is I did one of these uh, Zoom calls with a group called Solidarity, and it's to create community. So this was just like for the Hernando County area. But it's like getting to know each other so that if when that time comes that we have a need, that we have people we can reach out to, because that's one of my concerns is that I don't know my neighbors or anything. But it's more that I want people to have a place to go, you know? And so I was just throwing that out there as another thing that other people might be interested. The group is called Solidarity, and it's advertised along with all the other Zoom call meetings that are published by Indivisible.
Okay, thank you. That's a good suggestion. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about calling or about other kinds of activism that you might do or might be thinking of starting doing? Part of the reason I wanted to do this session is when I gave a short version of this at the local Indivisible meeting, and I asked the group, and there were 100 and something, maybe 200 people in the room, and I said, how many people already make calls? And only a few people raised their hands. So I thought, okay, there's room for growth there.
Yeah,
And so I
absolutely.
wanted to encourage people, like if you're nervous about it or you don't know how to do it, like I wanted to offer some background information about that. So
Those were really good. What you already showed us. is really good information, and it's helpful because I have 5 calls, but I've not used it. I don't know why. I just haven't made myself do it. And that's part of it. I gotta make myself do it.
Right. I think it's like any other habit that you're trying to form is like maybe make a plan. I'm gonna do it. Maybe if you don't want to commit to every day at this point, you say, okay, on a certain day of the week, I'm always gonna do it after supper, or I'm always gonna do it on my lunch break, or just make some kind of a plan so that you can put it on your schedule, and then it's something that's supposed to happen, and you don't keep thinking, well, I'll get around to it sometime. Uh,
Yeah,
I think I get activated by these newsletters that I get because as soon as I read it, I'm like, oh yeah, something has to be done about that. So then I'm inspired to call because I just read about it. Um, okay, I see a comment. I get really overwhelmed. I call a lot. There are so many issues. I just can't deal with so many crazy things. Oh yes, that is definitely a feeling that I think we all share. Um, this is why I feel like calling is so helpful because it sort of releases that tension to me. I feel like, okay, I did something, I made some kind of a dent. Um, and we have to also remember that they're trying to make us crazy with this whole shock and awe business and flood the zone and all of this stuff. So by not letting them make us crazy, that's resistance too. So part of it is, if you need a break, take a break. So I'm trying to offer calling as a very simple thing that you can do that you can balance with the rest of your life. You don't even have to leave the house, you don't even have to get dressed. So I think that it's a good way to sort of work your way into whether it grows to become a bigger form of activism or you just stick with calls. Either way is fine. Just doing that is good enough. Susan, I see you've got your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute.
Hi. Let's see. Let's see. Never mind. I'll, I can't seem to get myself on the video.
That's okay.
Uh,
Go ahead and ask your question.
okay. Oh, here we go.
There you are.
Um, here I am. First of all, Heidi, I really appreciate this session. I really do. I think everything that you're saying is so productive and simple and is exactly what I personally need to 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 work off some of the edges. And I say this as somebody who's also starting an indivisible chapter on Key Biscayne in
Hmm,
Miami, off of Miami.
great.
And as somebody whose son is an indivisible organizer of the state of Pennsylvania and the state of Virginia. And he can't quite believe I'm not making my calls. So it's a little shameful. But everything you've said that I've taken the notes on, even though you said I don't have to, I think is completely practicable and doable and important. And I know myself, I recently retired, but when people called me, I picked up the phone and I listened to them. And I think that's what we have to do. It's discouraging to have so many Republicans that we have to call, but there are some Democrats. And as you say, you sort of swap around and thank people and you thank people and you have to call other people out. And yes, that is how we can be heard. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to know that this was effective for you. So, and it sounds like you and your whole family are doing great stuff. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let me see if there's anything else here in the chat. And, also again, raise your hand if you have something else. I see, okay, Loba says, is the SAVE Act extra credit call to senators or House rep? I think it's in the Senate now. I can't remember. We'd have to check on that. Let's see. Yeah, things go in both directions. It's hard to keep track. They move around. What is this, Batya? Look at 3 to 5 issues. If you only do one, which speaks to your heart the most? Are you asking the group, Batya? Batya, are you still here? You can unmute if you are here. I'm not seeing you on the list. Maybe she's gone.
Yeah, I'm just
Oh, there you are.
suggesting- Somebody said because we're also inundated with horror right now.
Mhm.
If there's like, 3 to 5 issues to call about, to just make it more personal, which one speaks to you the most or affects you the most or makes you crazy the most, and then just do the one. And you can do the others because that's what I do. So, they're all important, but certain ones just get me really riled up and really upset. And that's what motivates me. Not that everyone should be an emotional crazy, but yeah, so take the current 5 issues, even these 2 issues, which are both very important. Which one is just more makes you more passionate and will motivate you to call, you know. So just a suggestion.
Yeah. Thank you, Basha. Mom, I see you said you wanted to say something, but you couldn't find the hand raiser.
Yes. How come I can't find the hand raise?
I don't know.
Is it down there?
Look
Okay,
on
I'll just,
there's a react button that might be what you're looking for. But
I
anyway,
tried
what do
that,
you want to
didn't work.
say?
Besides making calls, I've subscribed to a group called Focus for Democracy, which I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but they're a very brainy group that researches methods of reaching people that are low information voters. And they raise money to send to these groups to get them going, like seed money and support money. The one they're working on currently is a group that creates short bursts of information that are put on the most widely used iPhone social media that the majority of people use, like X and Reddit and whatever those are. I don't know what they all are. But they develop very short, emotionally charged key bits of information that can give the information that's required to people who don't know the information, who don't know anything about what's going on. So I've been helping them get watchers, people to involve with them, because I have a very long contact list, having been involved with so many different Democratic groups in the villages. So I send out about 400 emails every month to people ask, asking them to watch. And they, mostly people who do watch, contact me back and say, well, it was fantastic. They're so clever. I can't wait to see what happens. And as the program is going on, it's a Zoom, they read out first they present what these groups are doing. And then the second half, they ask for the money. And they call out what people are putting in the chat. Oh, here's $100, here's $14, here's $10,000. I mean, they get all these different amounts of money being donated. And then at the end of the session, like a few days later, they send the people like me as a co-host the summary of how many people were on that call and how much money they collected during that session. So there were 2,000 people on last month's call, and they collected $999,000 to give. They don't keep any of the money for themselves. They're supported by their own outside groups and their own money. And all of the collected money goes to these particular groups that they present to us as the public, which are fantastic. So I just wanted to mention that that's another way of being supportive. It's called Focus for Democracy, or F4D. You could just put that in Google and you'll get to them. So that's all I wanted to say.
That's
Thank you.
great. Yeah, thanks. Thank
I'll
you.
go back to under my rock.
No, that was great. Um,
Okay.
So I wanted to respond to something I see in the chat. Cindy with a Y says, what really angers me is that by the time I hear about issues, the House or Senate is already getting ready to vote. Yeah, it's hard to stay on top of stuff. I would say that issue voter is a good one for that because they are telling you specifically, here's the bill, here's what people say about it, and then afterwards what happened. But I think that one is a good one for staying on top. But really, all of these newsletters and five calls and all of them, if you check on them like every day or every few days, it'll be easier to keep up with this stuff than just waiting to hear about it on the news because they'll probably tell you like afterwards, they will tell you the result. And Loba, I see you found that the SAVE Act is in the Senate. Good. Thank you very much. And then I just also wanted to make sure I gave you a live link to the handout. There it is, so that you can click on that rather than copy and paste it. Because I've compiled all this stuff for you. All right, good. Anything else that anybody wants to ask or comment or anything? I'm checking through the chat to see if there was anything else, but go ahead and unmute if you have something to talk about. Let's see. Oh yeah, Batya, thank you. So on June 14th, if you're local here in South Florida, we're going to have a car caravan through Palm Beach County as the No Kings protest. And I did want to make sure everybody knows about No Kings. You can go to nokings.org, no matter where you are, to see what's happening in your neck of the woods. But the protest in this area is going to be cars joining from different points throughout Palm Beach County to all kind of head towards Mar-a-Lago and then have a rally afterwards in, I forget where it was. It's in West Palm Beach. Batya, if you want to.
Meyer Amphitheater
Meyer
on
Amphitheater.
Flagler and Datora at 11:30. And if you go to Mobilize or you subscribe to South PBC Indivisible, you'll get newsletters from us. But we're leaving in the south from Boca, from Del Rey, from Boynton, and Lake Worth, heading up. And then if you're in North County, people are starting from Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, and they're coming down. And we'll be meeting and circling around together and then going to the rally. There'll also be people that are marching on foot, meeting at Phipps Park off of Dixie and South Boulevard at 9:30 and starting to march at 10.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, wherever you are, I hope you'll find a protest to participate in. So actually, I wanted to talk about protests. So along with making calls, I also go to protests. And, making calls is kind of solitary, but going to protests is like a party. And I find it very energizing to be part of a crowd that wants to save democracy because you finally feel like, okay, I'm with people who understand. I like showing the world that these issues are important enough for me to get up and leave my house, which is an effort for me. So I'm interested if you guys go to protests or if you don't go to protests, what stops you? And is there something that would make it easier for you to go to protests? And I do want to point out something that I've learned about it, another way to protest that I think is very useful, that I notice people doing here in South Florida. So a lot of our protests are sidewalk protests where we're holding up our signs and showing them to the cars going by. So our audience is actually the traffic that's going by. And then they, if they disagree with us, sometimes they yell at us or give us the finger, but more often people agree with us and they're honking in support. I've started to see that there are cars that are participating in the protest, not just responding to it. So they'll have a sign in their window, or they'll have a flag coming off of their car, and they'll circle the block to participate in it. And then every time they go by, the crowd cheers. So I think that this is a really useful tool, especially for summertime, especially in Florida, when it's too hot to stand on the sidewalk for a few hours. So you could be in your car where it's air conditioned. Or for people who aren't that mobile, who can't stand for a long time, who can't march around, if you need to be sitting, you can participate from the comfort of your air conditioned seated position in your
That's right.
car, and you can still be part of the protest. So
That's a
I
great
love
idea.
that suggestion out. What? What's that?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so I've noticed people doing it, and I think it's great. I think especially because, we have an older population in this neighborhood, and it's a lot of people who maybe aren't physically able to cope with going to a rally and standing around for 2 hours in the heat. So I think it's a really good alternative. But
If I may interrupt you, Heidi, another way to be supportive of protests is to take video of one or of several and post it on Facebook or send it to friends. Just put it on YouTube.
yes, so that's also handy to do from a car. If you have a passenger who can be hanging their camera at the window, and as you're driving by, you're taking a picture of all that long sidewalk with so many people and so many signs, and then that makes great video. I think even if your local news maybe has, a submissions address, that you could send it to them because they do sometimes crowdsource material. Um, and also, of course, just sharing it on social media, just getting it out there so more people know that this is what's going on. Yeah, I see you nodding your head very strongly, Cindy. Okay, and then Cindy with a Y says, got a lot of good info about how to protect yourself, what rights you have, etc., from an indivisible group, and you can get this from the ACLU. Right. So I've been very lucky that the protests I've been to have been peaceful, but I know that's not always the case. So it is good to get that kind of information beforehand to know what to do if things aren't as peaceful. Um, and just be prepared. I went to a de-escalation training that Indivisible held. That was very useful, and I think they probably do those periodically. Um, and to know what rights you have in case the police in our neighborhood have been actually really supportive and helpful, which is great. Um, but yeah, it's just good to know those things just in case.
Um,
Right. Yes, it
uh,
does give energy to the people in the protest when the cars are honking. It just adds a level of, joy. Actually, the best one I was at was the hands-off protest on April 5th. I was in Boca Raton, and like constant honking and supportive traffic, and so many people. There were like thousands of people there, and it was amazing. It felt so good because the rest of your time, you're like, am I crazy? What's actually going on? I can't believe this is happening. And then you're with all of these people who are like, yes, this is wrong. We understand. We demand that things be put right. And so it feels really good. So I definitely encourage it. Um, Taking biometric info off your phone. Right. So that's one of the things I have heard that if you were in a situation where the police were demanding your phone, if it's like facial recognition or a fingerprint, they can make you open it. But if it's information, like intellectual information, like a code, then they don't have the right to make you open it. I'm not sure why that's the difference, but I've heard that. Bachi, I see you're raising your hand.
Yeah. I don't want to interfere too much. You're doing an amazing job. So isn't she amazing, everyone? She's
Yes.
Heidi's amazing. Two things. One is at this coming up monthly action group monthly action meeting, we're gonna have a member, Melody, sharing on data security. So she has two topics. We'll see which one we do this month, and maybe that'll also evolve into a Zoom. So one is protecting your data when you're protesting, and the other is protecting your personal data. So I'll probably start with protecting your personal data. So you might want to come out to hear her. She's lovely and very energetic. And then I also have a funny anecdote to share about a protest if people want to hear it. So
Go ahead.
yeah, it's a little fresh and a little fresh for me. But I won't say all the fresh parts. So a good friend of mine, I'm a professional artist and a new activist, and somehow helping to run the PBC Indivisible with a lot of help from my friends. So a friend of mine came down from West Palm to join us at the last May Day protest in Boca. And she had a shirt on in Spanish. I didn't even notice it. She's white, white Anglo lady, but her brother-in-law is Mexican, and she's been to Mexico. So she had a shirt on in Spanish, and we're going around giving instructions and encouragement to all the people, and people started stopping her. And so what's on her t-shirt? I didn't ask her. This is my friend Kim, and it says Trump is an a-hole in Spanish. And I'm like, and I'm leading this group, and sort of, we have some level of decorum that we have to protect as part of National Indivisible. And people are taking pictures and people are laughing. And it was hilarious. I didn't know till, 3/4 from, our walking around together that this is what was on my friend's t-shirt. And she had it made up in Spanish. And the other good part of that is that Latins were showing up to the protests, even in spite of the crackdown and all the insane cruelty going on. And a lot of them aren't leaving their homes, and not going to church, not taking their kids to school because of this horrid, horrid hatred. But to know that there were enough at this protest who knew what her t-shirt said. So there's my little anecdote.
Yeah, thank you. And that actually reminds me of something else that I think is worth pointing out, which is, I think I can't tell because the cameras aren't on, and even if they were, I wouldn't necessarily know, but I have the impression that we're mostly a bunch of white people in this Zoom. And it is incumbent upon us to protest because a lot of other people, it's not safe for them to, even though they may agree with our positions and may want to protest, it's just literally not safe for them to be out there. And so it's all the more important that we do it because somebody's got to do it. So those of us who have the privilege of white safety should be doing it. Okay, so it's about 7:30. It's been an hour, so I really want to thank you guys for coming, and I'm glad that this was helpful. I hope that the recording will also be helpful, and we'll share it with more people. And as I said, let me know if you have any questions, and also if you want to be added to our mailing list for South PBC Indivisible, let us know. So again, it is South PBC Indivisible at gmail.com. Putting that into.
I think Marion may have had her hand up.
Okay, real quick before we
Yeah,
go, Marion.
I did. I didn't want to intrude. Didn't want to interrupt. Um, the one thing that's bothering me, I mean, you touched on it, Heidi. But I'm talking about white people. There are people who do agree. However, I find that they're so frightened to come out. I mean, I was at that April 5th protest in Boca, and I've been up in West Palm. And then when I'm in New York, I go to a group out here. Um, it's they're very, very frightened. And even if I say everything, I mean, up here, it was even more subdued than Boca. Boca was more fun, actually, than here. But I don't know how to persuade them. I mean, it's not that they're black or they're even Hispanic. They're just white, middle class,
Yeah, I think a lot of people,
and I don't know what to say.
on the news, if it bleeds, it leads. And I think that the news tends to show protests that get violent, and they don't show
Mm,
the normal protests where everything is fine. So I think people have an impression that going to protests is scarier than it actually is. So I guess, if you can share your personal experience, maybe when you're at a protest, make a little video or something to show
mm,
what's going on and how peaceful it actually is, or um, I think the best we can do is share our own experience. Maybe try to like get somebody to say, I'll take you to lunch. Come with me. We'll just go to the protest for 1 hour and then we'll go to lunch. Things like that, I guess. It's the personal connection that is probably going to do more
mm,
than logical arguments, is my guess. Because emotion is stronger than logic in most cases.
mm.
All right, so it's 7:30. I guess we better wrap up. But thank you all so much for coming. This has been really good. So,
Thank you,
Thank you.
Heidi, so much. That was
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Would
you.
people be interested in a sequel of sorts? Follow-ups, goal setting, more info, what you've been up to? Do we
Sure.
want to take a vote of that? How many people here would be interested in a sequel? We don't know when yet. Heidi's on the road.
if you can't raise your hand, you can put something in the chat to say if you're interested in.
So Patricia,
Um,
rose her hand. Marion, anyone else? Goal setting, more info.
And I'm curious,
Loba.
like so some of us, we've talked about already making calls. Is there anybody here who hasn't yet made calls? And I guess my other question would be, are you going to now that we've had this conversation?
Well,
So I'd like us to sort of like agree that we're going to do it.
I'm gonna call.
All right,
I
awesome.
haven't done any calls this year. Now I will.
Yay.
Go,
I've
Cynthia.
I've
I'll
made at
do
least
more
5.
calling.
I'm going to call
I'll
I've
too.
do
called
more
already.
calling.
Fabulous.
Okay.